and call the meeting to order. Thank you. That was good. Want to do the pledge first, or do you want to call the roll?
I'll call the roll.
There you go.
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen? Director Harris?
Hanson is here. He's just stepped down the hall for a minute.
Okay. Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings?
Here.
Director McGlashan? Here. Director Morin?
Here.
Director Slowey is in for Director Miller. Director Natoli? Thank you. Director Cerna?
Here.
Chair Chenier?
I'm actually here and sitting here.
Me too.
You good?
And in the door comes Director Hansen. With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be streamed live on RT's website. Tonight's meeting will air on Wednesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. and replayed on Thursday, June 16th. I'm sorry, before I said June 16th. It's June 15th at 6 and replayed on Thursday, June 16th at 6 on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Wiley, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Please salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right.
On the calendar, consent calendar items 1 through 10.
Do we do public comment first? Now?
No, we do. Thank you.
We do.
Sorry. I have more cards over here, by the way.
All right.
Public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay. How many do you have?
One.
Okay. So we'll go 3 minutes each, and we'll be cutting this off for any new individuals at this point. So Arthur, you're first. And then Etta Larrabee, is that correct? Mike Barnbaum, Joe Gamble.
I'm Arthur Kitterling here in Sacramento, and I would like to ask RT something. There has been a schedule change. I know it isn't that much time difference, but on one side, it'll be Route 28. On one side, it's they leave about 2 minutes later on one side and 3 minutes on the other. But there hadn't been no new schedule at all for us, and I was wondering the reason why. Maybe the reason why that you haven't is it because that it's only 2 or 3 minutes? And that's on the 28. And on 21, if it's at all possible, please, us continue the Sunday service with 21. If you're one reason why that there's not much people from along Lewis and Orlando on the weekend is because it starts so daggone late. I know it goes to Mather at an early hour, but it doesn't start going to Lewis Orlando until after 10 o'clock, and coming from there is after 11 o'clock on the weekends and main holidays. Now, on Route 95, you have not had a new route too long for Citrus Heights on the city ride. I request that don't that do not just continue the service on the city ride and on the 95, because that on the 95 for one, that it hasn't had a route of what they have right now that long, just since April of this year. And I don't think it's got a chance to even have, to let people know.
Okay, great, thanks, and we'll get you some information on the
All right,
first piece.
and
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Arthur.
You're welcome.
Etta? Is Etta here?
Hello, I will just read the memo that I have already given to several of the directors, and I will provide the others or send in an email, the ones that I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, the purpose of public
Etta,
transportation.
if I could just tell you, just so you know, and Henry will be talking about this later, we're not going to be talking about route cuts tonight. That's going to be, we're not doing that, so.
No, I'm just talking about the general practices,
That's fine.
management of regional transit.
Okay.
Excuse my throat and my accent, please. The purpose of a public transportation system is to provide transportation. The system is a trustee of public monies and should exercise its judgment in delivering the service in the most cost-effective way. Regional transit seems to me has a fiduciary duty with the monies that are entrusted to it. A public transportation system partly subsidized by taxpayers' money should not hire the maximum amount of staff and compensate them with the highest possible salary. Provide security service equivalent to those of an upscale business organization. To renovate its bus fleet with a state-of-the-art bus fleet, with an state-of-the-art vehicles. As a counterpoint, San Francisco, a city which I imagine has a much larger budget, keeps buses that are old, yet run often and efficiently. Who decides to renovate the bus fleet in regional transit? If it is assigned by a federal agency, this organization should be informed of the circumstances of Sacramento. The allocating body should be informed as well, and the monies, I'm pretty sure they can be reassigned somehow to the operations. The proposed cuts will affect Sacramento residents in unexpected ways, particularly the most vulnerable, non-driving seniors trying to get medical services, minimum wage workers, public assistance recipients who have children, going to the doctor, buying groceries, and going to church, and the handicapped. I personally know several individuals who fit in the categories listed above and who will be adversely affected by the proposed cuts. Regional transit should reconsider its management practices, particularly its financial management, and eliminate expensive and oftentimes superfluous services such as security. I reiterate what I said a number of years ago in this board, that my bus riding experiences in several countries and over 100 cities, I have never seen a security apparatus such as regional transits. It is definitely a proof of mismanagement and misallocation of resources, and total ignorance, disregard of the population you serve. The time has gone by?
15 seconds, when the light turns
As a
red.
non-US born, before coming to this country, and as a child, I was very impressed by Kennedy's words, and ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Sadly, RT management could be cited as the antithesis of this philosophy.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay,
I'll give you a copy. You can do whatever you want, but I will spread the word far away and wherever I go.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike? After Mike is Joe Gamble.
Chair, I think my item is not on the agenda. I was told by the clerk it was 11C, but
Okay. Mike?
Thank you, Chair Schneer and members of the board. Mike Barnbaum of Ride Downtown 916. I first wanted to bring up something that Arthur said, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but since he did, I wanted to clarify something which was in some of your most recent past issue papers from about 1 or 2 meetings ago. In mentioning about services specific to Citrus Heights, if you'll recall in the issue papers about that particular topic, RT cannot autonomously make cuts to any services in Citrus Heights without the consent of the city staff and the city council of the city of Citrus Heights. And if I recall correctly, the issue paper mentioned that the soonest that even that could occur through that protocol and process would not be until January of 2018. Whereas anything outside that realm was going to be January of 2017. But for the main purpose of why I came up to talk under non-agenda matters was there's 3 important meetings coming up. I want to inform the board of them and their importance. On Wednesday, all of them are on Wednesday of this week. On Wednesday at 9 a.m. In the SACOG headquarters building is the meeting of the Transit Coordinating Committee. Highlighted on the agenda, among other things, are topics pertaining to the Golden One Center and the Connect Card. At 10 a.m. in the new Sacramento City Council chambers will be the June meeting of the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. And at 6 p.m. over at 828 I Street, this is the Socopolis Library Galleria meeting rooms, will be an open house and meeting about the rail yard specific plan. This is an emerging development in the city, just to the north of the downtown area, encompassing the train depot. And this is going to be something exciting to come before the city council between now and the close of the calendar year. So we hope if any of them allow you to come on to your calendar and schedule, please do so. Later in the agenda, we will be talking about another rail corridor of interest to regional transit, but we did not mention it at this point because it is on the agenda later in what you're going to be discussing. So we'll get to that when it comes up. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Joe Gamble.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Joe Gamble. I am a train operator. I am here tonight on behalf of the membership of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 256, as well as to public that we are committed to serving. There were a couple things that I wanted to touch on, the first of which is a board item that was approved in November of 2015, adding some additional monies to the current general manager's retirement package. The issue that the union has is that in a time when we're laying staff off, that our key staff that are going to increase workloads for the rest of the people in the organization, we are going to be committed to an ongoing consideration of $75,612 a year into our current general manager's pension allocation from operating budget monies moving forward from the time he retires. Again, in a time we're laying people off, that seems a little tone deaf. I'm curious of the process in which we arrived at this amount of money. The second thing I wanted to address is the personal services contract for the current general manager. There are 2 sets of monies: fiscal 2017, $13,254, and fiscal 2016, $11,045. The union thinks that that there shouldn't be a personal services contract. When we appoint our new general manager, he should take over July 1, and our current general manager should not be retained on a personal services contract, because those are some ongoing costs, and at a time when it's great that the cuts are off the table, but we're still increasing fares. And I imagine that cutting service will come up again in the future if we're not able to be more fiscally conservative with how we spend our money. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Eric Sunderland. then Jeffrey Tartagia.
Hello, I'm Eric Sunderland. We're all relieved to hear that you've reeled back your proposed service cuts. Thank you for that. But we're still concerned about the 20 jobs you eliminated last week. We still need those jobs back. These are working people with mortgages and kids' college tuitions to pay. To say that they are just not needed jobs is crazy. If you talk to the administrative employees, which we have done, you will hear and see that they are shorthanded and so much that they are stressed out and frazzled. Now, to keep up with the jobs that they are tasked to do, let alone with 20 fewer people to get the same jobs done. Folks from the planning department told us that they presented the 2013 ridership numbers for proposed route cuts because they don't have staff to conduct new surveys. This work and so much more needs to get done. The only place we should be seeing cuts right now is in the bloated executive compensation. It is irresponsible that last October you voted to inflate the general manager's retirement by $75,000 annually out of the operations budget, bringing his bloated salary up to nearly $300,000 a year. It's not even officially a salary. It's money directed from the operations budget, money. And in addition to that slice of economic inequality cake, you're putting icing on top of it with $110 per hour after retirement position for him as a contract employee. The general manager's padded salary isn't the only instance of fiscal irresponsibility behavior by this agency. We have the second highest fares in the country, and it's going to the top executives instead of basic public services. We want to see these layoffs rescinded, and we also want to see a public forensic audit of this agency so everyone can see where the monies are going. If we fail to see a forensic audit coming in the next couple months, we will be filing a grand jury complaint outlining RT's financial misconduct and other general inefficiencies by this agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey? After Jeffrey is Fabrizio.
Jeffrey Tartagia, and if I only get 3 minutes here, do I get at the end to discuss all the other issues, or is it just 3 minutes right here?
3 minutes on public comment, not on the agenda.
Okay. Not on the agenda. You guys need to be reading more of what's going on with the Mobile Accessibility Committee. You also needed to say a big thank you to both Janice and to Pam, who was part of the public, the senior, the MAC representative, that in a sense is what leads you to Henry right here and right now. To Phil, your green, should we say, let's see what's called, Ridership 9. It has the capacity, being the full length, to handle disabled and bicycles. I'm suggesting, even though we've rescinded perhaps the cuts, that should save us money by putting combined in the blue or gold line. And also, both Phil, I believe it was, and Jay, dealing with the last 2 weekends. As the last board meeting, I said that you do not have covenantary service or advocacy on the weekends. I repeatedly see issues and problems that are not covered. In your particular case, you had for the second and third year, and this goes back to what I've directed to the board about planning and failing to plan, and the issues and problems that you need to do a much better job of asking questions and addressing. Fortunately, without my glasses, you guys are all a blur, so I cannot see anything in the expressions on your faces. But I will also turn around in this time period say, the first people I came in contact was Kevin from Paratransit. I came in with William Lowe, that was an advocate and such a gentle soul, and Mike over here, explaining much about transit. Those are examples that helped me and assisted me greatly in the task before it. Now, I'm also going to say our riders are a great deal smarter than I come to appreciate, because I went and changed the fare today, and indeed had both a wonderful experience in changing it over, because it seemed to me like this should have said new fare, new rates out there, but your riders are indeed smarter. One of the other things I will comment about is simply this. You have, once again, need to see about having annual open houses, because this should have demonstrated you in the last 6 months more than anything else the fact that people will comment. Now, last but not least, in my few time through here, I am suggesting, and this is where I take my hat off because of what Henry came on the first open house, and I've never seen any of you in the open houses show up for any of them or even know which one had the most people. But September 15th, let's be there for the opening of the Capitol.
Thanks.
And lastly, the 14th, let's not use regional transit to explain to them why we have a problem with Sacramento regional transit.
Fabrizio? Is Fabrizio here? Nope. Maggie Coulter? Delphine Cathcart?
I wanted to talk about service changes.
We're not having any service changes.
So is this the time to talk because it's not?
You can talk on it if you like, but we're not, they've canceled that discussion.
Well, I think we'll just give these remarks now and get
That's
them
fine.
over with. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Sacramento Transit advocates and riders. STAR is not commenting on individual routes tonight, with two exceptions, the Green Line and Route 65, but rather offering a few criteria that must be considered in making service changes. 1, reinvestment. A portion of the savings from service changes should be reinvested to increase frequency and hours of service. 2, reducing route frequency and thereby increasing headway is unlikely to save money because it increases wait time and makes routes less attractive to riders and more likely to fail. Combination and realignment is worth considering to improve route productivity, since existing routes overlap unnecessarily in some cases and leave geographic gaps in others. 4, routes should not be eliminated for at least 2 years after establishment or significant revision because it takes time for riders to adapt. 5, low ridership routes. RT should explore, develop, and implement better ways to serve the mobility needs of transit-dependent persons now being served on low productivity routes. Back to the Green Line. STAR supports the suspension of the Green Line. STAR does not support the combination of the Gold Line with the Green Line. A reduction in the frequency of service for the Gold Line to the Sacramento Valley Center from 4 times to 2 times an hour is unacceptable. That increase in wait time would reduce ridership on the Gold Line because Amtrak passengers would no longer rely on it. The Green Line passengers, there are 2 buses, routes 11 and 15, that offer service to and from downtown. If desired to maintain the brand, Township 9 developer could pay Green Line operational expenses until such time as ridership increases. Furthermore, the outright suspension of the Green Line would save $95,000 a year more than the combination of the Green and Gold Lines, which would be devastating to the Gold Line. Route 65. STAR does not support elimination of Route 65 because it's not been in operation long enough to build ridership and community support. STAR would like to see more disclosure about how service changes are developed, maps showing bus and light rail stop boardings, population density, areas of low-income transit-dependent riders, and employment centers would help the public. The series of cuts and changes over the last 8 years has substantially reduced ridership. An operational audit must occur so that we better understand what is causing the financial crisis, the need for service changes, fare increases, and loss of ridership, and how these issues can be resolved effectively, both in the short term and ongoing. Thank you.
Nancy Vincent?
Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wiley, Mr. Lee. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm with AFSCME, Local 146. I represent the supervisors here and the administrative technical unit. We've taken the lion's share of hits in layoffs, 39%, I believe is the number that Tim gave us, and we're really concerned about a few things. These are dire times. It sounds to me, in everything that I have heard, is that your service has exceeded your revenue. And these revenues streams seem to me that they could have been noticed much sooner. Things like your gas tax and things like that. I understand from what we're told by the folks that we're negotiating with that it came to you late, but that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I've noticed that it cost me $45 to fill my tank as versus $75 for the last year or so. So we're looking at the fact that of how do you spend your money, where do you spend your money, and I think a forensic audit is in place, and AFSCME is doing an internal audit as well with the information that we've been given. With all due respect, Mr. Wiley, you're a great guy, I really like you, but the problem here is that you guys have agreed to spend an additional about $80,000 out of the operating budget for the rest of Mr. Wiley's life, and you're calling it a supplement to his retirement. I'm sure he worked enough years where he has a decent retirement and he has a high salary, so that retirement looks pretty good, just as it would for anybody else who works at RT. You know, you count on that being true, but to have an extra $80,000 annually forever out of operating, that's a job. That's a job, maybe even a couple of jobs. That's pretty serious. And to me, that's not a responsible use of your money. We were told that this was a contract that you entered into in 2015, maybe even a little earlier when you began to negotiate that. But times have changed. In November of 2015, I doubt that you anticipated layoffs. I doubt that you anticipated that you couldn't support the services that you have right now. But here we are. A contract takes two people. One person can say, I'm good, I'll forfeit my part. That would be Mr. Wiley. And I would certainly hope that because he cares about the people who work here, he would do that. I think it's pretty significant, and it certainly would say a lot to the folks who are losing their jobs. The other thing is we're real concerned about the people who went. These are some of your most senior, very valued employees. They're the ones who have a great institutional knowledge. They're the ones who bring a lot to the table and are not easily replaced. It's as if the tasks that they perform are things that could be done by anybody else that we assign them to. And that's just simply not true. So we're a little concerned about that. We're really concerned that we were not given an opportunity to adequately negotiate this. We were informed on the 3rd, and here we are today, 10 days later, and it's done, and people are out the door. That's not enough time to talk about alternatives. And it's certainly our intent to do that. We think that there are other ways, and we plan to bring those other ways to the table. So we really hope that you will pay attention to that. We hope that you'll be responsible. We like you, Mr. Wiley, great guy, but now's the time for everybody to ante up. Thank you.
And if you have other suggestions, I'm sure, happy to entertain
We
those.
do. We'll be back.
Fabrizio, you want to go? You're last.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chair and Board of Directors. My name is Fabrizio Sasso. I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Central Labor Council, and we represent all the union members at RT that are being proposed to lay off. And I want to talk to you today. We, the public, know that RT has been dysfunctional for quite some time, and executive management has continued to recommend the same solutions to the same old problems. Budget cuts, layoffs, fare increases, service cuts, and every time you've had to make hard budget decisions with the dilemma that one area will be affected more than another. And you're not bound to uphold these decisions at this time. For years, we've all heard that RT has problems with general and fiscal management. We've seen projections on riderships and fares, revenues, performance, you name it, fall short without anyone going back to check why. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants to tell us what we should know, and instead of making cultural and structural changes, RT continues to fall back into the status quo, layoffs, cuts, moving further away from your core mission. The public has lost confidence as the burden is shifted onto the riders and the workforce, and all of this perpetuates the problems within regional transit. These workers love their jobs. They're not here to get rich. These are mothers and fathers who make this agency work day in and day out. They get us to work, they get us to school, they take us to our doctor's appointments. They're committed to providing the best services in the region, even if they're behind the scenes keeping RT moving. Despite what executive management says, their layoffs mean a loss in the ability of RT to maintain its current level of service delivery. Over and over again, the riders and the workers are asked to pay for bad management and oversight. And over again, we've agreed to concessions. But what about the business community? What about executive management? What concessions have they made? So today that ends. Not once did I think, by entering into public service that I could become richer than 7% of the American public. And certainly the folks who are getting laid off don't think they would either. And before this meeting, I looked at an agenda item from 11/9/15 that said Mr. Wiley will get an additional $75,000 annually to his already $210,000 retirement. This is coming out of the operating budget. That's over $285,000, or as we like to say in labor, he's in the top 3% in retirement. On top of that, he'll make an additional $110 an hour as a consultant to Mr. Lee, advising him on how to fix regional transit. That's insane. That's like asking an arsonist to train a firefighter. There needs to be a cultural change if transit's going to be saved. This is not how you fix it. So it's time to get RT back on track. We're asking that you don't lay anyone off, and that there's a moratorium until after the November election and we see what happens to the STA tax. We're asking that you take no action until an independent audit, an independent forensic audit occurs, and it's for the public to look at. We ask that you give Mr. Lee a chance to settle into his position. My final thoughts.
All right.
We ask that you ask him to get him settled into his position, let him take a look at the layout of the land, and given his resume, we think that he'll do a fine job here. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. So that's it on public comment on items not on the agenda. Move to our next item.
Consent calendar items 1 through 10, noting that you have a speaker on items 8 and 9.
Okay, so let's hear that. Mr. Tardigia, you're on number 8, and Ramey Osborne, you're on number 9.
Do you want a motion for the balance of the consent calendar?
Let's do the two speakers. We'll do the whole thing together.
I had loads of questions, but I will tackle number 8 in that you also have an intent out there to replace what appears to be a number of no debit, no credit machines. I'm assuming that this is probably something related to whether, like the banks, where when they pre-planned that machines were having a problem, but right now you have many places where you cannot use a debit or credit card to collect fares, period. But this is about right here of establishing a mobile device that you've only tested for Verizon and for AT&T. As in the first days of testing, I showed through Metro that it is only a 2 gigabyte that is received, and there are dead spots. Sacramento Valley Station is a big one. Another one is right by the ATM being for the convention centers. So yes, the direction is going to be a mobile app, but you are so interested because it's a revenue producing that you have not done enough, not even forensic, enough study about what is the issues in using in Sacramento, and you've already put a report out last meeting as you extend this. Now I'm presuming that is this going to be at the new fare rate of July 1st, or is it going to be the reduced fare for full fares, but $3 for discount related to your mobile application device? I only learned about this when I discovered that the building, like here, that are thick, prevent signals going in. So your mobile app probably is not going to work very efficiently at the Sacramento Convention Center, as well as I do not know if it even works inside the county. And I wonder if anybody bothered to check. You had the time to do that, but again, you didn't do, and you don't do public comment enough to find the information out, and you guys do not, you do things before you have done your research. The public is interested, but you guys go ahead, ramrod through, and wonder why in the world regional transit is not very well liked by the public. I've had an earful being at the Valley Station of hearing people coming in from Oakland, and they say, "Oh man, no, please, I'm visiting, but let me get out of here as fast as possible."
Thanks, Jeffrey. Ramey Osborne.
Good evening, board members. I would just like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I just have a couple of friendly questions. I represented a bidder on the RT site in Gold River, and I just a couple days ago found out that on tonight's meeting, there's a resolution to waive the advertising requirement. And I was just curious why that is being done, and as opposed to at least notifying the other bidder as to this particular situation, so that in case he had interest in bidding, that he could come forward. It's not a big deal, but I worked on that site from 1965 to 1975 selling aggregates. And my office is 300 yards from the site. And I spent a lot of time in Gold River, at the tennis club, at the restaurants, Bel Air, and so I just feel a little, I'm not sure what the right word is, and I don't want to throw rocks, even though there's a lot of rocks on that site. I'm just kind of curious why at least I couldn't have been informed, we couldn't have been informed of this particular, where you're just waiving the advertising requirement and going forward. Again, just a friendly question. I'm not throwing rocks, even though there's a lot of rocks on that property.
Okay. Mike, do you want, or Tim want to address that?
And that was less than 3
I
minutes.
have a comment.
And, yeah, thank you. We appreciate both the friendly part and the less than 3 minutes part.
So we don't really have a code section that deals directly with the situation that we found ourselves in on this particular property, but I think if the speaker's interested in the property, I think that's something that you can certainly express your interest, and I'll pass your interest along to our real estate people and they can give you a call. I mean, the property's not sold.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And Roberta, do you want me to pull the item, or do you want to?
Yes, please.
Okay, why don't we do that? So let me pull the item for now, so you're good for now, right? You got an answer to your question. Did you have another one?
no.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be cute or corny, but I'm not trying to hear throw rocks, but I worked hard to get a client interested in that property, and just curious why
Right. And I think Mr. Spangler is going to pass that on as well. Okay, so let's.
Thank you.
So I'll move the balance of the agenda,
Okay, so we have a
consent
motion
agenda.
by Ms. Budge that does all items but item 9.
Except 9.
And a second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, so thank you, Linda, for that. Roberta and then Don on item 9.
Okay, on item 9, again, that property is in my supervisorial district, and I know we had 2 proposers last year, and I only learned several months after the fact that the one that was chosen withdrew and terminated the agreement last October. So if we still have potentially 2 interested parties, I would think it would be in the best interest of the board to follow the same process that we did last year and open this up again, rather than just going back to the party who terminated the agreement. And so I would like to, I'm not sure what the appropriate action would be to do that.
so
It's not what's before us tonight.
Okay, well, why don't you hold on that, Don?
I was going to offer some more comments, and so if that's a motion, I would second Ms. McGlatch's motion after you get any more comments. So.
Okay.
I'm not sure what my motion
Yeah,
is.
well, it would be to
do,
advertise it
though.
for 30 days or whatever.
It sounds like your motion would be to basically deny the requested action and substitute instead a motion. Well, no, it would just be to vote no on this because you think it should go out to a more a fuller group of.
My motion would be to deny item 9.
Right.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Mike?
I was just going to explain, I would add that in taking that action, then staff would automatically, we would follow our procedures, which would be to go back out to bid.
What's the, if I can just ask, so can you tell us the differences? Is it just timing on this?
Yeah, that would be the main thing, is that there's under our rule, and like I said, our rule doesn't directly address this situation where we were under contract, fell out of contract. It doesn't say in that situation you must go back out to bid. But I think one could read between the lines and suggest that maybe that was the case. That's why the issue was brought. Staff didn't feel like there'd be a lot of interest in the property given the contamination issue. And so the idea was just for timing purposes to go forward on a shortened schedule.
Diane?
So we did set down a path of trying to get the property sold in the quickest but I guess most beneficial method. Our original plan was to basically go back to the two people who submitted proposals. We were first approached by USA Properties, and so we've had a few discussions with them up to this point. But without this action, we wouldn't be able to limit it just to those two. We apparently, the first time around, because I wasn't involved, sent basically a solicitation out to a dozen or so potential investors, and the two were the only ones that came back. And so in order to get to a closed deal where RT could realize the income, the path forward was this authorization by the board to negotiate with
So let me just ask a quick question. Is there an since you've kind of gone through this process, there is some new information. Is there an expedited process you could use where you still open it up for bidding, but it's much quicker than the normal process?
Or perhaps just go back to the original two proposers and limit
We
it.
could do that too if you want. I mean,
Right.
we
We
could
could.
provide direction on that account, I would assume. So,
That would be helpful.
okay, why don't we do this? So I have a motion and a second. If this is, Ms. Budge?
Okay, but it sounds as though there may be other people interested.
Well, this gentleman is the other one who was there originally.
Okay, all right. As long as that doesn't exclude somebody else who might be potential out there. I mean,
Hang on.
Regional Transit's had this property since 1980 or so. And
So as I understand the board's discussion, with the information provided, we had two original proposals after going out to bid. And it appears as though that there may be interest on both of those two parties that originally proposed. So that is one option. We could, based on board direction, we can go back to those two original parties. Or if it's the board's direction, we could go back out to bid, open it up to any potential proposers. And that would take a bit longer, but that's another option that's available to us if that's what the board desires.
So Roberta, what would you like to do?
I think it's probably unlikely that there would be
Others?
additional interested parties, so
All right, so I'm going to go back
I'm
to
fine with going back, but I think we should give both parties.
No, that's fine. So we have a motion on the floor to deny this recommendation, staff recommendation. I have a second on that with direction to go back to the two who are interested at in the first round. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other part of the motion, I should say, is that there would be a delegation of authority to the general manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreement following those negotiations.
Okay, maker of the motion, are you good with that?
Well, last time
It
that
would
was
still
brought
con-
to the board, it came to the board.
Right.
Well, it would still come back for a final approval.
Well, no, this would be,
Do you want to delegate, or do you want it to come back? to the
I'd
board?
like it to come back to the board.
Okay, so we're not delegating. So the motion is deny the staff recommendation, provide direction to go back to the two interested parties, and then come back to the board. You're good?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. We're done with the consent calendar. Let's move to the next item. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item number 11, General Manager's Report.
Tonight's general manager's report is provided by Laura Ham.
Ms. Ham, you have some system-wide improvement initiative updates for us. There's no item A on this, correct? Correct.
Good evening, Chair Chenier and board members. The first update I'd like to provide for you tonight is regarding our transit agents. We have 5 transit agents deployed on the system. We have 7 in training, and there will be another 13 in the final training group that will come on later this summer. Our RT police officers have received very positive feedback during the training period regarding the increased presence and fair inspection on the system.
So I'm just going to make a request on that. And Norma, I guess you're doing the training on these guys or women. So I would love if within maybe 60 days we could come back to us with a report of what impact this is having, both on security and on fares.
Okay.
Best that you can.
The final group actually starts Thursday with training, so that's a 3-week training program, so they'll all be out in the system by
Perfect.
then.
So maybe 60 days from there would be great to know where we are on that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Is that, you guys good?
Norm and I will also be coming back to you later this summer with an update on the Homeless Navigator program and introduce the Navigator to the board.
Great, thank you.
So a couple of updates related to promotion and coordination. In cooperation with SACOG on system improvements and service to the Golden One Center, SACOG has generously requested the use of $100,000 in congestion mitigation and air quality funding through their transportation demand management budget to support a request for proposals for marketing and station activation around RT and YOLO bus stations. The CMAQ funds are designated for programs that are designed to reduce congestion and improve air quality. The consultant will promote alternative modes, including walking, biking, and transit to reach the Golden One Center. Efforts already underway include collaboration between SACOG and the Kings and the City of Sacramento, as well as the Downtown Sacramento Partnership. We're looking forward to working closely with all of our regional partners to encourage the use of alternative modes. That'll be going to the full SACOG board later this week, June 16th. We've also recently been invited to participate actively in the update of the ESC Transportation Management Plan that we're working with city staff and representatives of the Golden One Center and their consultant, Fair and Peers, on that project. We've also recently been invited to participate in the City of Sacramento ESC planning meetings, and we attended our first meeting last week on June 9th. So again, looking forward to closer collaboration with the city and our other partners on these efforts. We're moving forward with station improvements throughout the system. This project includes approximately $6 million of station upgrades to many of our starter line stations. Site preparation and demolition is complete at 7th and Capitol. Prep is underway at 9th and K and 8th and K. I mentioned last meeting the LED light improvements at our suburban stations. We are now preparing for security camera upgrades and other improvements. Negotiations are also underway for RT Police Services and Fair Inspection staff to be housed at the 16th Street Light Rail Station and at 1515 S Street specifically. This space has been offered to RT by the Heinz Corporation at a very low cost, virtually only maintenance and utilities. It will dramatically improve the sense of presence and security for RT customers at the station. I also wanted to mention that we're working with Michael Heller, developer of the Ice Blocks project, who has dedicated resources to design station improvements at 16th Street, and he is working on raising funds for further work. So I'll be bringing more information back to you on that project as that develops as well. We have issued an RFP for at least 28 credit debit fare vending machines, and Jeffrey had mentioned this earlier in his public comment. This will significantly expand our ability and our passengers' ability to pay for fare and parking with credit or debit cards. We're also considering partnership with the city for parking enforcement and citation management. Again, that'll improve the sense of presence and security in RT parking lots. Jeffrey also mentioned that there's an issue with needing Wi-Fi or access to a data network to use our current mobile app. We'll be resolving that with the permanent mobile app as well. And we are also working on a demonstration of Wi-Fi at Sac Valley Station. Finally, although it's a relatively small source of revenue, we have established a customer base for public CNG fueling at our McClellan Business Park fueling site and estimate earning $10,000 to $15,000 per month in CNG revenue.
That's good.
And that's all I have for you tonight.
Great. Any questions?
Sure.
Mr. Natoli.
Yeah, just how many customers that reflect?
As far as public customers, I have that here in the written report. Paladin is doing the marketing and outreach for us at that site. They have one fleet right now, U.S. Air Conditioning. It's an 8-vehicle fleet, and they have a lead on a second customer So that reflects, we've sold $1,500 worth of fuel just since May 26th.
That's great.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Laura. That's great. Mike?
And then the final item under GM's report is a quick update from service planning regarding the analysis tools and visualization that we currently utilize in conducting our service planning.
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. As the chair mentioned, tonight's item isn't really about service changes per se, but service changes have kind of thrust some of this material into the spotlight. And during our open houses, one of the outputs was a lot of really good, engaged customer interactions that really arose out of some of the maps and visualizations. And based on some similar comments and suggestions and requests here at the board, what we wanted to do was share some of that with you all. Obviously, there's a lot of important business on the agenda, but based on the way a lot of our riders said some of this stuff just brought things to life, we thought it would be an interesting item and a topical one to share with you all. So this first chart here, this is kind of an adaptation of a chart that we always include in our quarterly ridership reports. And the darker bars indicate which routes have more frequent service. So on weekdays you can see like we have just 4 routes with 15-minute headways, and we've got another 16 with 30-minute headways. And one of the takeaways from a chart like this that I personally, to me at least, is, you know, those 20 or so routes, those really kind of make up the core of your system. If you go down to Saturdays and Sundays, which we don't often talk about as much, but you get down to there being really only 22 routes in the system on Sunday. And so what you can kind of take away from this too, when you look at the fact that on Sundays there are only 2 routes right now that even have 30-minute headways, is that you know, frequent service, 15-minute frequent service, it's always a subject of a lot of talk in transit planning. We know a lot about how much more useful that is. But RT also has a lot of work just on its basic foundation. If you talk to any rider, an hourly bus route is really not tremendously useful. If you have no other choice, that's certainly what you'll take. But a system where we have just 2 30-minute bus routes is not a tremendously useful system. So to me, this just kind of shows a lot of the baseline foundational work that still is left to be done, that still is kind of an artifact of some of our service cuts as far back as 2008, 2009, and 2010. This next map, this kind of shows the routes by color. Red routes and orange routes are your routes that have lower ridership productivity, lower boardings per revenue hour. If it's in red, it's less than 15 per hour, and that's below all of our standards for productivity. If it's in orange, it's below 20, which means it's below our weekday standards. Yellow ones are above the standard, but they're below the system-wide average on Mondays. And then your green routes are your strong routes. And, you know, we presented this just kind of as an output of a conversation where, speaking with a rider, when he saw the routes presented like this, he said it just suddenly made sense, a lot of what was on the list. A lot of these routes where we said, this route is a candidate for potential elimination. And, you know, you present tables and numbers and dollar signs, and it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but when you see it on a map, you go, okay, I see now where ridership may be struggling and RT is not attracting as many riders. So this next chart, it takes kind of a simplified approach to presenting the system. There's no route numbers, there's no route names, there's no locations called out. What we do on this chart is we've presented the system in terms of the level of service. So the thicker the line, the more frequent the service. Those big, thick lines, that's where we actually have 15-minute service. And you can see some of our major corridors, Florin and Stockton Boulevard, Auburn and Greenback, and light rail. Although when you get out past Sunrise, even light rail is just at that kind of intermediate 30-minute level out to Folsom. We've also presented this kind of in a context here, showing our population density. So the darker green indicates where there's greater population density, which is usually indicative of greater transit demand. I always do like to show, again, we don't always talk about weekends, but you can see on Saturdays, there's not any of those big, thick lines. And as we go to Sundays, like I mentioned, it's basically all just 60-minute headways. And you can see from day to day where gaps emerge on the system in certain places. Some of them have been commented on. You know, the Land Park corridor has been a source of frequent comments how little service there is on weekends and especially on Sundays. And it really brings it to life when you see it in this context. But one of the things I'd also note is when you look at where the population density is, and then when we move to this red map, which indicates areas that have higher concentration of poverty and low-income households, we do see here a system that has definitely been rationed, that has been victimized by some budget cuts over the years, but where a great deal of that service, the service that we do have left, gaps and all, where a great deal of that actually is concentrated in areas where we have a lot of demand, either from population density or from low income. The last three charts here, these are our ridership dot maps. On these maps, the bigger the dot, the more boardings per day at these stops. And this set of maps is really where we got a lot of great engagement from the riders, where, you know, there are a lot of questions. Why are you doing this? How come? What does that mean? And to see it on the screen, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. You can see on this map of downtown how the J Street and L Street corridors, where we run Route 30, how there's a lot of just really well-used stops where you compare to F Street or P and Q Street, where we have Route 34 and Route 38, which both were candidates for service reduction, that there just isn't much patronage at those stops. Another interesting example,
on that one, do you mind going back for a second?
Yeah.
So one of the contentions on a 34 is that people are actually commuting in to downtown on it. So this is only showing boardings, but do you know where riders disembark?
Well, a lot of it's downtown, for sure.
So if you pulled out and you looked at East Sacramento for 34, where would all the boardings be?
Well, it's not on there, but the map in East Sacramento looks pretty similar. The dots are all pretty small going through McKinley and
is there anybody on, say, that route that is a commuter that's getting on at one point far away and disembarking in the downtown core as a sort of commute route?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, and in different forms of data analysis, you can see how people, you know, ride end to end. It doesn't really, this kind of map doesn't really show it, but there are other kind of maps that kind of show it better, or charts you can do.
Do you have those maps? You seem kind of excited.
I'd be real excited if I had them right here. But
okay.
Yeah.
So, for instance, students that might, I don't know, use Sutter Middle School.
Which we've all gotten a lot
That's that's the information that we're getting.
A lot of what we use, which is we can just do a matrix of all the stops and all the times, and we can do like a heat map of that to see what times and what stops we have boardings and what the passenger loads are. And a lot of that stuff doesn't look as neat on a PowerPoint, but is a lot of the meat and potatoes of what
I'm
we
assuming
use.
that you'll be covering that when you bring us a comprehensive look at all of the routes.
Well, I have a binder about this thick of all the routes.
So why don't you go ahead for now?
We can maybe pass it around.
Thanks.
Yeah, just a couple more of these dot maps, and that'll wrap it up. This is an interesting one. This is the Rancho Cordova area, and there's just a lot of interesting contrasts on this one. And this particular one is actually a couple years old, but Route 72 on the Kiefer and Bradshaw corridor, just a lot of really strong ridership throughout the length of the route. It really has kind of everything you look for in a strong route. It has schools, it has major employment at the county and the courthouse, it has apartments, it has daily visitors for appointments, especially at the courthouse. And having light rail at either end, at Manlove and Mather, makes it very practical and useful for bi-directional travel, which is really the key to keeping those buses full all day. You look farther east, and again, this is kind of a simplified map we normally use internally. It's kind of missing some labels, but Route 74 and 75 in Rancho Cordova, you can see on Route 74 and 75, for instance, just there's not as many strong stops. There's a notably really strong stop on Route 75 in Mather, and that's kind of the basis of one of our proposals to change that route around. Last, this is kind of a broad shot of the South Sacramento area, and to me the most striking thing about this is just that there's just a ton of ridership on a lot of routes in this area. You can see how so much of the action around Florin Mall as a hub, and on Stockton Boulevard there's some interesting, you see there's just a great deal of ridership and very close stop spacing, both on Stockton Boulevard and Broadway, which makes it a really challenging route. 65th Street kind of has that broader stop spacing. It's kind of like a limited bus or a rapid bus, but it's not out of route design. It's just kind of a function of the way that street as an expressway tends to have its bus stops located spatially. So I'm probably getting into a little too much planner stuff. I know there's a lot of important business tonight, but hopefully that was of interest, and we'd be happy to elaborate. I'll take any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Budge.
Okay. So a couple related to a couple of the things that people have been talking about. Suggestion that you, in terms of the question about destinations, one of the things that Director Cerna asked for last time this was discussed was that you all look at critical destinations, which would include things like schools and hospitals, because a lot of the people that we're hearing from need, especially because some of the bus districts, some of the school districts no longer bus their kids anymore. So, and I can remember that when I'm back in the late 70s, when Sac City stopped busing, and all of a sudden the kids were all riding the city bus. Then at some point, a couple of months ago, you presented a series of dot maps, but they were in green instead of these yellows and reds. And they were labeled inbound and outbound. And for instance, on the 21 and the 28, it was so easy to see that people were taking them in the morning to get on the train. And then when they get off in the afternoon, they take it back to where they came from. Because there's so much discussion about 21 and 28, and that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. And finally, your chart of, the red chart of areas that you analyzed under Title VI or whatever that is about places with low-income riders,
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you compare that to the schools that have 100% students that qualify for free and reduced lunch and see what you come up with. It just strikes me that the information you would get from that would really inform that map.
Duly noted, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Barnbaum, did you want to speak on this item still? Where's Mike?
Excuse me, Mike, yeah.
Yes, good evening. So wanted to speak to this, but from an angle of what I do in my daytime profession. I'm a production trainer for the company that I work for, mainly out at National and Nain on Route 13. But I've been asked to do some flex work recently, doing some production training of jobs our facility on Florin Perkins and Belvedere has. And then after the work shift, mobility train a couple of individuals to use the RT system from the southbound Florin Perkins just after Belvedere stop to the Florin Town Center. And it presented some both opportunities and challenges in a good way. With a shift from 7:15 to 3:45, and the bus coming between 3:50 and 3:55, we explored the options. And frankly, it was quite interesting adventure to make a decision as to what the trainees I would be using and what route they would transfer to. And the utmost factor that took place was frequency. Among anything else, it was frequency. We saw that you could transfer from Route 61, which is what we get on, to Route 65 on Power Inn at Fruit Ridge, and that's every hour, and it goes to Florin Town Center. You could transfer to Route 81 on 65th, and at that point, that route is every half hour. It's every 15 minutes west of the Florin Town Center on Florin. You could transfer to Route 51 on Stockton Boulevard at the Rite Aid store, and that route's every 12 minutes. You could transfer to Route 68 on Fruit Ridge and 44th, and that route's every 30 minutes. Or you could transfer to Route 67 on Martin Luther King and Fruit Ridge, and that route is every 30 minutes. So it was decided after a thorough review that the best way from Florin Perkins and Belvedere to Florin Town Center was to transfer to Route 51. And frequency was the selling point in making that decision. If anything else was more frequent, then the opportunities and challenges would even be greater. Just a little kind of lesson from mobility training that frequency goes a long way in making decisions for individuals with disabilities and other passengers. When you board a once-an-hour route, what are you going to transfer to? The one that's most frequent.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. That's it on this item.
Next item, item number 12, resolution approving an employment agreement with Henry Lee as RT's General Manager CEO, presented by Tim Spangler.
Tim Spangler, go ahead.
This is a good deal. The end.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Mr. Chair, I appreciate the brevity of staff's presentation.
All right, we have one member of the public who wishes to speak, Ms. Stanton.
Good evening, Chair and Directors. Barbara Stanton, Ridership for the Masses. We just want to say hello to Mr. Lee. Good luck with your new position, and we look forward to working with him in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Good comments. All right. Mr. Lee is asked not to speak on this item at this point since he'll be back to us with the budget later, so I want to commend him on that as well.
I'll move the resolution.
Have a motion.
Second. Move the resolution.
Hold on one second. I have a motion by Mr. Hume. Second by Mr. Hanson. Let's do a roll call vote on this, please.
Director Budge?
Yes.
Director Hanson?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Hume?
Yeah, I don't know. Aye.
Director Jennings?
Absolutely.
Director McGlashan?
Aye.
Director Moran?
Yes.
Director Slowey?
I'm going to abstain since I haven't been a part of any of these discussions up to this point. So nothing against Mr. Lee. I just haven't been here.
So noted. Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Cerna?
Aye.
Chair Chenier.
Aye.
With that, we had a quorum at 95 votes, I believe. Adam, yep, that's it. 95 votes. Motion passes.
Congratulations.
All right.
Next.
I do want to, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Go
I
ahead.
do want to note that we have a few people who participated in the search committee, which helped the board. So David Taylor is here. Anyone else besides the board members? But David, I want to thank you for the time you did on that as well. Appreciate it. All right, great. So officially July 1, Henry will be taking over. Let's keep
Item
going.
number 13, resolution adopting a transition vision for RT's general manager, CEO, presented by Doug Carter.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to challenge Mr. Carter to match Mr. Spangler's presentation.
Mr. Carter already told me he would do that, so.
I like that.
Not that one.
There we go. I just wanted to also acknowledge Greater Sacramento and thank them. They actually funded this effort and helped put this together so that you would have a leg up going forward with your new CEO. The purpose of our transition vision, really we're in the midst of a transition. We have a lot of things that are changing, service quality, fiscal sustainability, leadership, cultural changes, partners, Golden One Center. And so with all of that transition, it's actually a very good time to set the goal line that we're all headed to really define what the goals are in the vision to help keep us all on track and bring all of these activities together. The new CEO and the leadership team also have to carry forward the initiatives, projects, programs, and priorities that are already in place. So we tried to capture those to make sure they knew these have to continue where we're adding on some new initiatives. The vision really covers the next 2 to 3 years. It says, what is it that we need to do? What do we need to focus on? How do we get everybody to work as one and align towards common success? Understanding the vision, this is a little different than we've done in the past. That is, sometimes we've had this goal is most important, and we would trade off these other goals for performance on this goal. We're asking you to do something different. We're actually trying to say that each and every goal is important and essential. No two goals compete with each other on the goals that you're adopting. So instead of rank ordering them, saying that each and every is important for every activity. So whether I'm doing a business process, payroll, or if I'm doing service provision or a capital project, it says that I need to look at the full slate of goals and say, how do I make this project better against the full slate of goals? For that reason, I'm saying I really wouldn't recommend saying this is our most important and this is our next most important. They're all important. Let's do all and every on all the projects and procedures. Let's talk a little bit about what the goals are. These should look really familiar. These are yours. Remember the process we went through. We did one-on-one interviews. Then we had a retreat where we talked about these together. Then I drafted something up and sent it around, and I received individual comments from board members so that we could get these exactly right. There's 5 transition vision goals. The first is customers first. We will provide clean, safe, secure, and reliable transit services and facilities for all riders and potential riders going where and when customers want. Valued partnerships goal. We will build effective partnerships throughout the greater Sacramento community with riders, potential riders, government, business, transportation providers, social, economic, and non-governmental organizations, employees, and labor. Fiscal sustainability goal. We will implement RT's fiscal policies to live within annual fiscal means, build appropriate reserves, analyze and plan for risks, and only add costs that are sustainable at high quality. Organizational excellence goal. We will relentlessly pursue excellence in all activities, aligning resources and actions across organizational units to achieve our common goals and deliver results that endure. Building capability goal. We will learn and grow both as individuals and as an organization, building capabilities to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. And so what we're saying is each and every one of those is important in all we do. If we go to the, I tried to present these in a little bit different visual form, and we used a pyramid to be able to do that. And what it really is trying to help show is there's a performance foundation in our goals. That is our goal about building capabilities and our goal about organizational excellence. They're foundational goals. That's where management focuses. That's where staff focus. They say if we do these things right, it enables us to then do the top half of the pyramid, which is deliver performance. And where do we deliver performance? In fiscal sustainability, in customer service, and in valued partnerships. So really, what you say is, I have to have the foundation of the pyramid. If I don't have it, I can't deliver the top. They're building blocks that come together, and it's really trying to show that it's each and every goal. It's not one goal or the other. We have to do all of the goals to actually get the results that we want. So here's something that I didn't get to the answer to, and we didn't get to the answer to at the retreat. You don't have to have a tagline. A tagline is not essential. We've all seen it. Lots of organizations use a tagline efficiently. A tagline is basically shorthand on things that people say that remind us of the whole vision platform. You may remember years ago, Ford had problems with quality, customer perceptions of it, and they made their tagline, "Quality is job one." Everybody could say it. The customers, the press, every employee had it. It meant something to every single employee. It didn't matter if you were in administration or accounting or frontline service or construction and development. It meant something to everybody. So those are kind of the rules for the tagline. It should be short, simple, it means something to everybody, and it's easy to remember. So I put down a few that would jump out. Again, we don't have to have one, but I'd like your thoughts as to whether or not we need one now or we want to look at it later. I put out ones that jumped out to me. Relentless pursuit of excellence. Those words were even in one of the goals, the organizational excellence goal. Changing to serve you better. So changing's an action item. It says that we're going to do things different. This is a transitional vision. Having the word changing in a tagline reinforces the transition. We're going to do things different. Unwavering commitment to quality. So that's a real focus of us. We're trying to push quality north. We know that there's expectations for it. We're committed to delivering that. Customers first in all we do. Again, that's one of the goal areas. Addressing tomorrow's challenges today. We actually talk about under the capability goal. Expect a better experience. So the question I would have is, one, do we need a tagline right now? And two, do we have a preference for what it should be? You had to have some work. I can't do it.
I like number 2.
Changing to serve you better. Others?
I would just say that tagline by committee is sort of like a camel design by or horse design
I'm with you.
which is a camel. So I'd rather leave that to our new GM and his marketing team to really work with some professionals to come back to us with.
And that's a perfect
With
way
all
that
due
organizations
respect to you,
do
Doug,
it. Oh,
I don't know that these are the Coca-Cola type slogans.
I'm with you. And I'm not recommending one of these either. I just didn't want to leave it off the table.
So if the board is okay, we'll take Mr. Hanson's suggestion and punt, and you guys can bring us back a recommendation at some point.
Yep. And I think that's perfect.
You can punt until you're ready for a touchdown.
Get 3 points now.
And Mr.
7
Jennings
later.
will be doing the kickoff return.
We've gone through this list before. I won't go through it, but we had listed out the priorities in the one-on-ones and then in the retreat, just to really say these are all change programs that are underway. We need to take these to the goal line and cross the goal line with each one of these. I'm picking up. The new CEO really has to drive, and congratulations, Henry. really has to drive the transition vision through all processes, activities, and initiatives. One of the things I say on here is what gets measured gets done. A really important thing is not just to have the goals, but to say how are we going to measure progress against the goals. And that should come from the management team. And it's actually a way to reinforce and re-energize efforts to change. Change is tough by being able to say, look, here's the progress we made. Let's celebrate that. Here's some areas where we didn't get the result that we thought. Let's change what we're doing to get a better result. So it's really important to monitor performance, to report it to you, to report it to the employees, to report it to the public that says these aren't just goals. We're walking the talk. We're showing that we're actually getting better in each of these 5 areas. There's 2 appendices at the end of this document. We're not going to go through those again, but one of those shows how to create value with different programs that we had in place. One of those programs was the cleaner program. As you're aware, I was involved in writing an issue paper on getting a part-time cleaner and looking at contracting for cleaning, and a lot of effort went into that. When I looked at the 5 goals that the board developed and looked back at the work that I did, I said, wow, I would have done that different if I had known that these were the 5 goals. And one of the things that's different that RT's looking at now is I would have looked at partnering more and partnering with a college or a community college in the area to be able to get staff to help do cleaning at night. It doesn't affect a school schedule. A lot of youth are night owls. A lot of them are looking for jobs that are part-time. You know, there's some potential there that we brought up now looking at the goals that I didn't think of back in fall. So looking at the goals changes all of us. It'll change what individual staff members think of, what managers think of, what you think of. So it's important to be able to apply the whole set. I'd really appreciate it if you'd think about this, and if these are the right things, adopt these goals, and let's go forward and accomplish them.
Thanks, Doug, and we appreciate the time you spent at the retreat as well, where most of this emanated from. We have one member of the public who wishes to speak, Mr. Alt, and then we'll go to comments by the board.
Chair Chenier, members of the board, Michael Alt with the Downtown Partnership. A couple of things that I think are important. Doug spent a tremendous amount of time, and I think when we started, Member Cerna, when we were in your office, I think a year ago, which we thought was going to be a quick meeting on some feedback on RT and
Yeah, it was at least 2.5 years, because I've been doing this 1.5 years, and it was way before me. So.
Yeah. Well, the process at that point was, what can we from the business community really do? And I think this board challenged us. I think the feedback that you got from the collective group that we had was, we think we could do a better job on behalf of the business community of being a partner. And I think some of the comments we got were, we only come here as a business community when things aren't going right. We'd like to see the business community be part of the process to make not just the system, but the operations and the collaboration better. We'd urge you to support the recommendations, but also tell you as we move forward, the business community will be there. I talked to Mr. Chenier the other night at the opening, or the other afternoon at the announcement with Henry was introduced, that we said it would be a mistake if we just left this hearing and said that we were done on behalf of the community from the business perspective as far as buy-in. We will be here with you. Mike, I want to thank you for your years of service. You've been a great partner with us downtown, and I mean that. You have really been there when we've needed you. Henry, welcome. You will have the business community's support, and this board knows we'll be here. So thank you.
Great. That's it for public comment on this item. I don't know if there's any board comment. I know we've talked quite a bit about all of these pieces. If not, I would look for a motion on the resolution. Motion by Mr. Hanson, second by Mr. Hume. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate all the work. Passing the baton to Mr. Lee. All right.
Sorry. Next item, item number 14, information, operating budget update, presented by Henry Lee.
So you would be the presumptive general manager, is that correct?
Presumptive. Thank you. Chair Chenier, members of the board, and actually, Mr. Taylor just left. He's one of the GM search committee member and the community leaders and the public, everybody. Good evening. I just want to first thank your confidence in me and the entire RT team. This is a great honor to lead RT during this very challenging time in its 43 years history. I see this not just a responsibility and more obligation to this community. And I would like to thank all RT employees for their hard work and professionalism. Thanks, Mike, for your 38 years dedicated service. In the meantime, I really appreciate the strong support from our riders, transit supporters, business leaders, and peer agency representatives. Today marks 100 days for me in RT, working for RT. And I have made many friends from this great community, especially RT riders, such as Mr. Jeffrey Tartaglia, and he left. He has constantly challenging RT to do better in last couple months. We had many calls and discussions. In partner with RT board, riders, business, and the entire community, we will make sweeping cultural and business changes, quickly, significantly improve our service quality and customer experience to rebrand this agency. So that's I wanted to say, I didn't say earlier. But today I really just want to give a very some brief about our FY17 budget update or status. We talked about a lot about the service cut proposal. We're going to remove that in our FY17 budget. And secondly, we talked about the reduction in force, about 20 employees affected. Let me first talk about our service cut. In last 45 days, we had lots of open house discussions, and we heard lots of feedback from our customers, from our board members, and from the public. This cut will affect over 1 million ridership. Many riders may lose their essential transportation options. We heard this loud and clear. So the management was very serious thinking about how we can avoid this or delay this. We start looking for any potential revenue sources to say if we can offset this potential service cut. Very serious big thanks to our funding partners, SACOG and the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District. Actually, just last week, 3 agencies get together. We discussed a potential operating funding source, which is about like $1.2 million. It's a great partnership. And with this potential $1.2 million funding sources, we immediately decide we're going to use this to delay or cancel this service cut proposal. In the meantime, actually, earlier you talked about our planning team about the service adjustment or service in the future service analysis. The team actually reanalyzed the whole list of the service cut and identified about like 20% of that, a very small subset of the service cut, those list options. Not just 20% of potential service adjustments with very minimal impact on our riders. we may save some significant cost. But we're not going to build that into the budget. We will, again, talk to our board members, talk to our public to say if we can gain support on that. If we can gain support on that, then we will use this fund to either rebuild our reserve or to improve our service quality. So that is our thought process, and that's what happened. So I really want to thank our funding partners, the two agencies. This is, we are very grateful for the effort, three agencies put together. Secondly, about that 20 positions affected, we heard now the clear again, about different perspectives. Our revenue estimates are always moving targets. In the last 45 days, we realized about like $2 million shortage for our the FY17's revenue sources. So we have to look for any potential cost-cutting measures to offset this potential revenue reductions, $2 million. First, we look at some non-personnel related categories. We identified about $270,000. And we still have $1.7 million shortage. And then we look at our business model, our business process, to see if there are any potential business process improvement opportunities we can take a look at. We can try to gain some savings. But when we review our capital projects, in the past 10 or 20 years, we had lots of huge or big capital projects, and we hired lots of staff, very talented and very dedicated staff to support those capital projects. And as you know, we're not going to have those huge, big capital projects in the near future, at least in the next 5 years. So our business model really cannot support those positions anymore. And then there's some other, we look at other organizational structure-related savings or some functions we combined, some redundancy functions we combined or reduced. And then we saved, we look, there are a couple positions we think we can reduce. But this is a painful process. We really want to minimize the impact on that. So we have done three things. First, we, within the management authority, we gave those 20, by the way, those 20 positions, actually 20 staff affected, about 15 or more than half of those are eligible for retirement. Beyond that, we give about $500 per service year for the severance package, which equivalent to about $100,000 for these 20 positions. Then secondly, RT will pay for the COBRA, the medical insurance, for the next 6 months. Thirdly, we give them 30 to 45 days administrative leave with pay, so they can have more time to looking for job and looking for other opportunities. We, as always, we conduct some counseling session and give more information and have employee meetings to just to provide assistance to these employees affected. So by doing that, we hope we can minimize the impact on that. We did this first to balance budget, and secondly, more importantly, to run our business in a more efficient and effective way. Really run our business more like a business, run our operation. Our board just adopted RT's transition vision presented by Mr. Carter as you can clearly say, the actions we have taken in the last 45 days very much reflect the visions or transformations RT is going to take, which first put our customer first on all things we do. Secondly, relentlessly pursuing organizational efficiency. And thirdly, strive to enhance our RT's future financial stability. And also, we're building stronger partnership with our key stakeholders. So that's what we're trying to do, and we have been doing. And again, big thanks to the Air Quality District and SACOG for their strong support, so we can stop this service cut and avoid loss of over 1 million ridership. So RT can continue to serve these riders who are dependent on us to go to their jobs or whatever essential transportation needs they have. So thank you very much for the time for me to brief you. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer that.
Mr. Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, Henry, on the proposed service reductions, I know that there was some, amidst all the considerations, there was one route, Route 54, that had some other circumstances in addition to ridership and so forth. Is that getting another look? And I know there was some notice from the Elk Grove School District on that to their business center, which has the adult ed and so forth. I've had some feedback, obviously, for some folks since I met with Mike and Greta a couple of weeks back. I don't know internally whether they're having discussions, but is that anticipated? You're still bringing that forward? Because it related, obviously, to some notice received. It was a low-performing route, but there were some other complicating factors now that have come forward in recent days. So,
yes, actually, we are going to do two things. First, all the feedbacks from you and from the customers, we have been analyzing those to say how we can go forward in the future. That's ongoing analysis of our routes, efficiency or productivity. That's first. Secondly, actually, we're going to work with SACOG, the planning agency, and other service providers in the entire region, no matter if from the public or private side, try to look and take a fresh look at the entire service network in the region to build up a integrated regional mobility plan.
Okay. So my question was a little more specific, I think, though, to the June 27th meeting, what was going to potentially be on the agenda, because I've heard from some folks. I haven't had a chance to even talk to Mike or Greta here in the last couple of days, talked with somebody on Friday. So I just didn't know where we were with that specific.
If I may, Greta Vollers, in June, there'll be a change to Route 54, and this was actually necessitated by a termination of a lease agreement with the Elk Grove Unified School District. So that change will be implemented. It was done under the general manager's authority in June, and it's a relatively minor change. Those are the only ones that we can implement under the general manager's authority. But it was required. We received notice from the Elk Grove Unified School District that they wanted to terminate the lease agreement. And what that did is it made it impossible for us to really serve the segment of the impacted road along Gerber. So for many, many years, we had a lease agreement to actually bring our bus onto Elk Grove Unified School District property. It allowed us to actually load and unload passengers in that area, and it also served as a turnaround point for us. We had several conversations with them, identifying some of the trade-offs and the issues associated with the termination of the lease agreement, but they chose to pursue it. So we'll be making a minor modification in June as a result of that change. And as Henry mentioned, with regard to the other more major changes, we'll continue to analyze those and come forward to you with a revised proposal at June 27th.
So I just need to be clear, though, for Mike, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, but since it is now going to affect, I've, again, had communication from others within the district framework, not at the level where you received a notification from, but obviously concern from some of the partners that do provide ongoing adult education and training services, and recognizing obviously we had a lease agreement with their facilities side of the district, and we were looking at trying to have something that was more proximate, because where we're going to go through now and serving Florence High School and so forth, we're going to be a mile or better away from the closest point where that bus passes, if I'm not mistaken, unless you've been able to make some other modifications since I last spoke. I was under the impression it was going to come back to the board. I guess that was my mistake, that it was under GM's authority, and again, you did obviously under the lease agreement, were required to do that, but I'm concerned that folks, I think, wanted to come voice that here in this forum, recognizing the district gave us notice at the higher levels, but there's some levels that I think are very concerned about what it means to students who may not have transportation any longer, adult students.
So there were 2 levels of changes. The one that we'll implement in June will make the closest stop just over a half mile from the Elk Grove Unified School District facility on Gerber. What was included and you were noticed of with the January 2017 changes was an additional change that would realign the service. It was one that was under consideration to serve Florin High School. That won't be implemented in June. We were required to cease service within the facility because of the termination of the agreement. And so we're making that minor change in June. We've done our best to notify passengers with A-frames and having people on board handing out notifications. And we really laid out for the school district what this would mean in terms of our ability to serve that corridor. So they were well aware of the consequences. And it was a change we had to make because
Let me
of
ask,
the termination.
so was there any meeting with the superintendent?
Not directly, no.
Again, that's not your fault. Again, I'm concerned, and we talked about it, and you briefed me on it, but Gerber Road has no sidewalks for a good portion of it, on either side. You have to cross the street with your own life in your hands to get there by sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, obviously, we didn't have a place to pull into. You were looking at an alternative. Is there the ability, if we can find an alternative location, to make it that you could actually reinstitute that? Closer to, not necessarily on their district property, but I know there were some practicalities, a high-speed road, no sidewalks, no roll place.
Exactly. Yeah, we did a thorough analysis of the area, and because of many of the issues that Supervisor and Director Natoli mentions, we weren't able to find an alternative location within close proximity that would allow us to safely board and exit our passengers and provide a safe path of travel to the existing facility. In addition to that, we had issues with a proper turnaround point that would allow our operators to take breaks. But really, the primary factor was the lack of pedestrian amenities that would allow for safe boarding and exiting of our passengers and walk to the existing facility that we have been serving. We are, like I said, currently, this change will take place here in a few days, actually.
Is it June 27th? When does it take place? 13th?
It's next Monday.
The 19th, okay.
19th.
No, I know it's the 13th. I get one final question then. So there's the ability, if we call folks together, to revisit this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an agreement
Yeah.
that has existed for a number of years, that Elk Grove Unified School District terminated the agreement, basically kicking us off their property. So we had no choice except to follow the terms of that agreement.
So I'm sure Mr. Natoli will be speaking to some people at Elk Grove.
Right, and I appreciate Mike and Greta, so I'll try to arrange a meeting with folks and sort
Yeah,
of.
if we can renew that agreement, absolutely, we would. We don't want to be doing what we're doing.
I know that. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Harris.
So Henry, I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. So you said in fiscal 2017, all the service changes, notwithstanding the one just discussed, are off the table.
Yes.
So I want people to understand that because there's been a little bit of confusion about that. Second, I was speaking to Mr. Lonergan, and he said that in the ensuing months, we will take a very grand top-down view of our entire transit system using GIS data, employment data, everything to understand where our routes are not effective, where they're most effective, and keep an open mind to realignment, combining, to really make the whole RT system more functional. So is that correct?
Yes.
So that's pretty powerful because that's something that we discussed at board meetings when we're talking about service cuts, that there are efficiencies to be gained, and we really need to look at what's needed. We haven't really focused on the routes for quite a while, and I think this is very good news. So can you give me an idea of the time frame to come back to the board with some with the power of this information, and how you will synthesize it? Is there any clear path forward, or are we just going to embark and see where it goes?
About 2 months ago, SACOG host a meeting with us together to talk to a service change expert in the industry, and that gentleman actually we're talking about just working with SACOG to bring that gentleman in, or anybody else, you put a bid on, then to help us to look the entire regional network, and to say what would be the best solution, the plan going forward. In terms of the timeline, I may not be able to really give you a very concrete timeline, but my plan is to work with SACOG, work with other service providers in the entire region to see if we can start to really start this project maybe in 6 months time frame. Then after 6 months, before the end of FY17, we can have some proposal to the board for board consideration. That is just in my mind.
Well, sir, I appreciate that. I'm very appreciative to SACOG for giving us a 1-year reprieve. This is really good news for all our riders and certainly all our constituents. I would just ask that we really push this, because what I would not like to see is for you to come to the board at the very end of fiscal 17 saying, we're in trouble and we've got to make big cuts, and here they are. So let's use this information and use it wisely, but let's have some lead time for the board so that we're not faced again with going to our ridership and saying, well, we're sorry, but we have to cut this bus line and this train line and so forth. I think we need to keep this conversation ongoing.
We will. We actually will be very aggressively doing that. If we are not going to put this proposal in front of the board at the last minute, we will give you ample, leading time. Then also give you different options.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you,
Ms. Budge.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify, what will be on this agenda on June 27th?
Very much what service card proposal is off the table.
Okay.
Then you actually, if you say the presentation or the issue paper in the board package, the actual entire operating budget will be reduced by $1 million because of the $1 million increase on the service card, and then $2 million reduction, as a result of the the reduction force and other initiatives we have taken.
Okay. Well, I join the people who are extremely relieved at the direction that you've chosen to go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this is an information item only. I just want to say thank you. I know reductions in force are never easy. We have a lot of employees who've been here for quite a while. This is part of getting the agency and the organization to a correct size to be able, this is about sustainability in the long term. So very difficult decisions, but we appreciate all the work, and certainly, we have folks who've come and said, don't raise fares, don't cut folks, don't cut service. Something has to give within that, and I think this is a good balance, and I think it's a fair package for those who are leaving, between the administrative leave, the severance pay, and the COBRA pay. So, but I would say to AFSCME, which has the most number of people who are being reduced, if there are other options that they bring forward, I mean, I'm sure that you're willing to listen to those as well.
We will.
So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 15.
Item number 15, Paratransit Inc. Board of Directors meeting summary in your package from the May 26, 2016 meeting, if Director Natoli has anything further to add.
Director Natoli? Okay, item 16.
Item number 16, San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting summary in your packages from the meeting of May 27th, 2016, if Director Hume has anything to add.
Nothing to add from the meeting. I just want to remind people that the San Joaquins are offering a program right now, buy one fare at full price and get up to 5 family and companion fares for half price. So
great. And
take some people on the train.
Okay, Mr. Barnbaum wants us to speak to this item.
Yeah,
Mike, can you do this one in 2 minutes?
Yeah, to the point Director Hugh made, that's a very good point, and it's one of the things on the focus of the Amtrak.com website. Right as you go to the homepage, there's a splash off to the right side about that very promotion. The exciting thing is, we've been talking here at RT level about service adjustments, service cuts. We are pleased to mention that someone is in the thinking mode of increasing service, and that is the San Joaquins. So I'm pleased to announce to this board that on Monday morning, the San Joaquins will go from 6 round trips to 7. It is the first increase of service on a direct train between Bakersfield and Oakland since October of 1992. It is the first increase of a round trip on the entire corridor since the 6th round trip was added between Bakersfield and Sacramento in 2002. Staff of this rail agency and JPA, based in Stockton, have put this as the #1 item of their business plan, and it is finally being implemented Monday morning. Going forward, this agency, along with all of the inner-city rail agencies in the state, in partnership with Caltrans and local transit districts, are going to be looking at a rail schedule optimization plan. That is mentioned, if you did get a copy in the mail or saw online of the Capital Corridor board packet, which meets this Wednesday again. That is mentioned in many of Mr. Kutrowski's reports going before his board this Wednesday. The San Joaquin JPA will meet again on Friday, July 22nd. I have been kind of their ex officio ad hoc scheduler-in-chief to recommend well in advance where they should provide an item on consent to their board to have their next meeting. And one key factor was the strong heat of the San Joaquin Valley is not a very essential idea to have a meeting in the valley in the month of July. So to celebrate the additional round trip from Bakersfield to Oakland, the meeting on July 22nd will be around the Jack London Square area in Oakland.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you for that,
Thanks.
Mike.
Thank you.
So we don't normally adjourn in memory in this body, but I think that events of this Sunday really dictate something a little bit differently. And so I want to adjourn this meeting in the memory of those who died. Such a senseless waste of life on Sunday. And also just want to say I'm so proud of Sacramento for standing up. And I was out of town, but I know Mr. Hansen helped organize the rally yesterday, and you had well over 1,000 people there saying this is not what Sacramento's about. It's a tough place. It's a tough world, and I'm proud of our city because we do stand up, and I think we can rise above, and we should continue to show our support for what happened and all those who were killed just senselessly. So with that, I want to adjourn the meeting.